Hello, welcome to an interview with the author. Tonight I interviewed Hannah Flint, author of Strong Female Character. Not only is she an amazing author, but she also is a podcaster, a reviewer, a critic, and a journalist. And it was incredible being able to speak with her tonight. I hope you enjoy. Brilliant. Well, welcome everyone to this interview. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'm here with Hannah Flint. How are you?
I'm good. I've just made me some rice. That's going to probably
Oh,
last me. You know, when you follow a recipe from a cookbook and
mhm.
all the measurements are for like six
Family of four.
people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm a family of me.
Yeah, oh goodness. But
So
fried
that
rice
is,
with leftover rice is the best. It's so nice.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think there's this fallacy that you shouldn't eat rice. I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel that's very Western thing.
Yeah.
Like, don't eat rice. Yeah, it's like, no, I eat
Oh,
like
help
there's
me.
enough bad stuff I put in my body
Oh, I
that I
love
don't
that.
think like 2-day old rice is gonna make it. But anyway, that's meal
Yeah.
prep. So that's what I've been doing. So I'm good.
I love that.
Thank you for asking. How
Good.
are
Oh,
you?
good. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, glad to be doing this interview now.
Yeah.
Have you watched, I saw that you watched Presents recently. How did you find that?
Oh my God, that's it's so funny because I randomly got given a gift thing and I've got like a presents
Oh,
like they
yeah.
sent me a little gift and what's great is that they sent me like sage.
Yeah.
And like a big
Oh,
and I already have sage and I was running
yeah.
out of sage. They've sent me like three
Oh,
like things to say. I was like, nice one, I'm sorted.
I
There's gonna
love
be
that.
no spirits in
No
this
spirits.
place.
It was so
Um,
weird, wasn't it? Like, I feel like the idea that someone's that close to you and you have no idea.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
actually, in some way, do feel like I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual in a sense. I feel like there's something where our essence or whatever you call it, souls or I think it goes somewhere. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. I just like, yeah, you just can't think about it. But I don't think it's in the sense of like, oh my God, there's a Victorian little boy
Yeah.
in the corner
Running
of my
around the
room.
corridors.
Yeah, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it's not like as like corporeal like, as you know anthropomorphic of having human things, but maybe their essence is around. I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
that might look like.
Yeah.
But yes, to your point, I did see Presents.
hmm
I loved it. I love Steven Soderbergh.
hmm
For me, it was. And you have you seen it?
I've seen, yeah, yeah, I saw it at the
Oh,
weekend. Yeah.
okay, cool, amazing. Did you love
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I really like horror films.
Did you
Like they're,
like it?
oh, sorry, you cut out slightly there. Um,
I think there might be a little delay.
There's a delay. You're back now.
So a
I've got
little.
like your voice and the audio at the same
Okay,
time.
perfect.
Um, yeah, no, so I liked it. I really, really like horror films. Like they're one of my favorite genres. And I think it was an interesting concept. I think maybe I'm not like as into films enough to kind of get it. Like I don't know if I understood it as well as I should have done. So that's why I was interested to talk to you because I saw that you
Mm.
saw it. So yeah, I don't know if I
I
entirely
guess.
got the concept.
Well, I think that's such an interesting thing because I think so much about art is the artist's intentions versus your interpretation, and I guess a
Mm,
lot of them feel that whatever you think. But
mm,
my thought at the end of it was, I immediate. I think it's so perfect. It came all together for me, and I'm sorry for anyone who's watching this. Spoilers. But I think what you realize is that there's a line in it where he said where the um I guess like the psychic says something like
yeah.
spirits don't experience things at the same time. It's all different sort of,
Yes,
they don't
that
have a
got
linear
me.
form of
Yeah.
time. So basically, in my head is the idea that actually what happened in the original version of the story was that his sister did die and he's held that guilt through his whole life. And that when he dies, his unfinished business, his spirit went back to the house they lived in, and he's a spirit all along, and he was stopping it. So he allowed himself to be killed instead.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of things. There's a few, if you think back to him, there was a line about like, there's a really good, great kid, there's a brilliant kid in there, there's a really good
Yeah.
man in there somewhere.
So-
And that was my interpretation after all, even the
Yeah.
final line at Lucy Lucette. So that's how I interpret it.
Yeah,
I
that is
think.
amazing. That was, I feel like I've got goosebumps now. Like that was, I had not even thought about that. Yeah, because that must be significant. I think that about films a lot. Like everything has some kind of significance. Everything is placed there for a reason. So that is, oh my goodness. I have to go to my
Now you're
girlfriend
like,
and tell
yeah,
her that that's what you think because that makes so much sense.
yeah. It's fun though, isn't it? Because I was a friend who didn't quite see that, but I guess should it have shown that more in the movie? Should it have done more? But for me, that's like the
Maybe.
perfect sort of short story. Because I
Mm.
think I've been writing short stories at the moment. I just finished writing a
Okay.
collection, and I think they leave you asking questions at the end. And I don't think
Yeah.
necessarily you need to have everything spelled out to you. I think
Yeah.
it can sometimes you can be like, you don't need the backstory, the forward story. If you think back, connect the dots of what's happened, and maybe you come at a different interpretation or not. But
Mm.
that's I think the beauty of like great art is that it kind of makes you think and feel
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, I honestly think it's a perfect film, and it's like under 90 minutes,
Brilliant.
which is
Yeah, I
perfect.
thought that. I was like, oh, this is such a great watch. Yeah. I actually recently learnt the term death of the author. Have you heard of that?
Oh, maybe, but I feel like in the sense that once art is out there,
Once it's
it's
out
doesn't belong
there.
to it, doesn't belong
Yeah.
to the art. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it. Yeah, I do think that
Mm.
because um I think even as myself as a film critic, I'm always about like how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
How does something make you feel? So my relationship, and also I don't know, you're everything. As you know, I wrote books all my
Mm.
about films and my relationship to films. So all my references are pretty much films.
Yeah.
But there's this idea. There's a film Rashomon, Akira
Mm.
Kurosawa, which is very short, but one of his shortest. But it's this idea about perspective and truth, and the idea that one event can happen and
Mm.
three people are involved. Right, so it's a triangle. So the truth is in the middle, and they've
Mm.
all got, and the 3 points is their different perspective, colored by the way they perceive the world and the way they are in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
So actually, we can never actually experience the truth of any situation because it's always
Yeah.
colored by everything we're doing.
That's so
So,
true.
what go see the Mona Lisa or go see some graffiti or something like that.
Mm.
You have an individual relationship with that will be to you. So I do kind of think that in a sense that intention, it's intention impacts, but I
Yeah.
think great yeah, I think you can, if you love something, set it free, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 100%.
that's part of
100%.
it.
Yeah. Well, that leads us nicely into like what we're going to be talking about today, which is strong female character. So yeah, I suppose that based off of what we're talking about now, like what is your relationship to the book now compared to how it was when you were writing it?
Um, oh, it's to do another reference, it's so interesting because I literally my job is to get people to talk. I'm a
Yeah.
journalist. My job is to get people to talk about stuff. But there's a brilliant quote that David Lynch said, R.I.P.
Mm.
He said like, "Oh, the books are talking." Like I don't. Everyone wants to talk about it afterwards. The books are talking, and I think so much of it is interesting with me. Of like, I've done it now, and then I re-released it last year with the extra
Yeah.
chapter, and so I'm kind of very proud of it. Um, I don't know. It's like I'm just kind
Mm.
of glad that it exists, and it kind of felt quite cathartic in many ways to write it. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I feel like now it's like for me that's in such a rear view mirror for me on where I want to be going next because that's nonfiction,
Okay.
and as I've mentioned, I really want to get like this is my year of creativity.
Yeah.
So I actually
The short
started this short
stories.
story collection
Yeah.
last year. I just finished the final short story yesterday.
Wow.
No, yesterday, the Wednesday.
Mm.
Um, and it's wild. I was talking to my friend Justin about it. We actually went to cinema to see Companion on Wednesday, and
Oh, I really wanted to see that.
yeah, it's
Mm.
it's fun. It's fun. I mean, it's been done. This it's quite derivative, but it's funny to get going.
Yeah.
It's like freestyle something like that. But
Mm.
he was a musician, and now he's a quite very successful rap artist, and then he's now moving to screenwriting. And we
Okay.
were talking about like how certainly when it comes to my like nonfiction writing, or because all I do is nonfiction, right? I'm a journalist, so
Yeah,
critiquing
yeah.
all that, it's all nonfiction. But there's something that what I get. I had when I wrote that book, I had such a thrill and it was such an achievement. It was like, oh my God,
Mm.
I wrote in like 2 months. So I was writing 10,000 words a week. I was
Wow.
like, and it wasn't healthy.
No, that
It
sounds like a
wasn't,
lot.
yeah, it was, yeah, I was very fresh to the publishing industry. And there's a lot of things when you look back on, you're like, oh, yeah, I
Mm.
probably would do things differently. And it's certainly my approach to things now is very different.
Yeah.
But when I finish like writing like these short stories, or even I've just picking up playing a ukulele, and I've been
Mm.
teaching myself how to play. I've been writing my own songs.
Yeah.
The rush I get that feeling. I get that feeling of like when I write a really good review or whatever, but it
Yeah.
seems to be going in that. And so I guess like what I really think about that book was that it opened me up to the possibility that I could as write a book
Yeah.
um outside and and I think it was this thing of I want the whole purpose of that book was to kind of look how can we if films is for everyone, how can
Mm.
we feel more up, feel seen more in it, or you know?
Yeah.
And I guess it's like I don't know, it's this idea now where it's like, well, if I can't see it, I kind of want to write it, and a lot of imposter syndrome has prevented me from,
Mm.
even embracing that sort of creative path. Even though it's been very much in me, I've been always been quite creative from a
Yeah.
young age, but I think, socially conditioned into thinking that's not for you.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that. That was a really lovely answer. I think it's interesting, yeah, like with the whole death of the author thing, like obviously once something out there, it's almost like it's no longer yours in that way. So it's nice to know that you still like think about it and use the journey you went on to kind of reach the creativity and like the passion that you've got for what you're doing now. So
Mm.
what was your relationship with with the publishing industry? Like you said that you were like quite alone in that industry when you first went into it?
So my circumstances is that I had was approached by a literary agency from someone I knew, and they very much focus on marginalized writing. And the person, who ran it really loved my writing. Said, "Have you
Mm.
ever thought about writing a book?" It's like, yes, but I needed someone to kind of reach out to me.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't want to like totally. I think it's that thing of I think there's this idea that I tell you for my advance for my book, I got 2.5 grand, which is ridiculously low compared to a
Yeah.
lot of people that I know. And
Mm.
if you think that if it comparatively, so I wrote nearly 100,000 words
Mm.
and I got 2.5 grand. If I do say for if I write profile something or
Mhm.
whatever, like if I do say I'm doing a piece for someone next week and it's 800 words and I get £400, right? So
Right.
that's 800 words.
Yeah.
So
It's
relatively
really
speaking,
not.
it was quite a lot, and
Yeah.
it was, it was they always had very sharp deadlines, and I didn't know that that wasn't normal, right?
Yeah.
And I had an agent who was super lovely, but I don't think necessarily was um, she's not an agent anymore.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
That kind
so
of helps.
I think it was going in kind of like finding my feet that's made me realize like now, as much as I'm grateful for that, even one thing I will say it's I was glad at least when I got to re-release the book because
Mm.
there were a lot of I know there can be errors, but the proofreader for my original book wasn't great.
Oh.
So I hope anyone watching this isn't going to go through and like
Pick out the edits, yeah.
I was recording my audiobook, and that's when I was like, I did the recording on it. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I spoke to someone else, and some authors don't get paid to do their own audiobook. And I actually advocated to say I would like to get
Yeah.
paid. They
Of
asked me to
course.
come in for every day, and I got paid for it. But I've
Yeah.
spoke to other authors where they don't get paid, and that is
Yeah.
wild to me because it's
You've
your
got to
time,
advocate for
right?
yourself.
Well, if you would pay an actor to read it, why would you
Mm.
not pay the author? I don't know. Anyway, so I was
Yeah.
very happy but that was me advocating for myself, really.
Mhm. Mm.
So that's one of the thing I would say is like really advocate, also speak to a lot of other people as well. I think there's
Yeah.
this kind of hush hush around this thing because people don't, I don't know. I'm a freelancer. You
Mm.
need to talk to people about rates and all this thing. And I feel
Yeah.
I'm very transparent about a lot of things. And I think it's really important,
Mm.
especially when the written word, especially, is devalued
Mm.
nowadays. So yeah, so my experience with that thing was definitely like, okay, if I want to do another book, and the short stories was something where I just had all these ideas, right? Just
Mm.
keep writing them down and stuff. And then I did this first one, and then luckily I had this person who mentored me, Nikesh Shukla, and we spoke to him, we'd speak to him, and he talked me through for about a few months. And then I
Mm.
just went off on my own. And then I realized like I don't want, and I left the agency because I just felt
Yeah.
like they're not, I would rather just like not work, not do that, and then do my own thing. And
Yeah.
then hopefully, at this moment, I'm trying to approach to see now I've got a completed manuscript. I've
Yeah.
been looking at who would I want to kind of work with,
Mm.
who would be interested. So I definitely think my relationship with the publishing, it was quite naive going in.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was actually interesting. I read Yellowface, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh, that
Mm. It's exactly.
that was a very interesting read. Yeah. So I read that afterwards. So I think it's definitely, it's trial and error. I can't knock it in the sense of I got to do something that other people didn't get to do.
Yeah.
And also what's great is that, the whole thing about an advance is that you don't get paid from your book sales until that's done. Well, I'm out of my
Yeah.
advance now, so it's great. So
Oh,
like the last
exactly.
royalty
Yeah.
check I got was £58.
Wow. Okay. Congrats.
It's something, and it's been
Yeah.
translated into Croatian as well, which is crazy. So like,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
I hope it's the same book.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Um,
you're never gonna know, are you? Can you speak any other languages?
I was trying to learn Arabic on Duolingo, and then I stopped because it got to a point where it was like I completed all the modules, and
Yeah.
then it was just repeating the same thing. I think there's
Yeah.
probably a better way for me to learn. So one of my big, I don't know, fingers crossed, manifesting is this year I'm working with a Palestinian Excellence Center,
Mm.
helping them edit their kind of website and doing some things for free for them to
Really?
help them out. But they
Yeah.
also do a thing where you can go out to Hebron for a month. So I'm hoping at some point this year to
Wow.
go, and you can like learn Arabic. So who knows?
That would be an
Maybe at the
incredible
end of the year.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great. But yeah,
Yeah.
So publishing, yeah,
Yes, probably.
difficult.
Yeah. No, I think that definitely with the transparency thing, because with money, even in like I suppose like a contractual, like professional environment, I think money just isn't really something people talk about, but transparency with that is so important, I think,
Mm.
in general, because then you know that you're not.
Well, yeah, I think it's also what I've really learned, and this is actually just mostly through my actual just journalism career as a
Mm.
critic, as a host, as a broadcaster, as a journalist and writer.
Mm.
People will, your clients, people that you work for, a lot of them want to pay you the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And unless you talk to other people, they're going to undercut you. And
Yeah.
actually, if we start working for less or doing stuff for free, that means it brings down
Yeah.
of that. So that
Everyone
becomes a
else's.
devaluation of it. So talking and maintaining and asking for more, I do think that's really important to do. And having that kind of advocacy for yourself, I think it can be quite scary. And again,
Mm.
I had blinkers, I was naive, and I
Yeah.
feel like now understand it a little bit better.
Exactly. Yeah. I suppose everyone's got to have a journey in a way. Like you've got to have certain things happen to you so that you know better in the future, I guess. Was there anything that kind of got like taken out of the book, or was there anything that you wanted in there that got taken out, or was there anything that just didn't make the cut for the book?
There was one chapter I was going to do about but it kind of was too much of a crossover. It was kind of um about I used to work at Mail Online Showbiz,
Okay.
and it was kind of looking at it was kind of a thing to look at showbiz journalism as a kind of extension of like looking at red carpet and the culture around it, and obviously like
Mm.
the sidebar of shame and all that type of thing. But I think it just crossed over a little bit too much with some of the things that I wanted to speak about, and I'd already talked about my focus on my critic and as a
Mm.
critic, and then there's the chapter I did on kind of eating disorders, and that kind of got into the way that you'd have heat magazines and stuff like that. So I think
Yeah.
it didn't quite fit with the book because it was about film. I don't know. It just didn't quite work as a separate chapter on its own.
Okay.
Um, but I think actually pretty much the biggest thing I had to really think about was I mentioned kind of I was and my editor Kwaku, they gave me just one little bit of advice when they were reading through it. You couldn't put every single thing in. I was so worried because there is this imposter syndrome, and as you said in the book, as I say in the book, female film critics aren't as many, especially women of color, especially Arab, and so there's
Mm.
this idea of like and we are treated as if we're not as smart about films, and that's the thing. So I felt like I had to prove myself, and I was scared of any like critic read it, right?
Yeah.
If they would and then my Kwaku, they said to me, um, you're not writing this book for critics, you're writing it for everyone else. And so
Yeah.
that's when I realized. And I think that's sort of thing as well. That's why at the beginning of the book, I put this quote from a Charlie Kaufman BAFTA speech about screenwriting about,
Mm.
I printed it out and I had this thing on my wall, and it basically kind of like, you know, there are many things that you think, I can't paraphrasing it, but it's like you think you're uninteresting or there's nothing good about you. You need to take that off the table and just
Yeah,
think what you want to offer is unique to you and just like do you, basically.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think, everyone has a story to tell and
Yeah.
everyone's story is worthy of being told. I
Mm.
guess it's just about are you can you how do you tell it?
How do you tell it
Do you have the
exactly?
do you have
Yeah.
the word to tell it? Do you have, and I think, writing is a craft, whether you're doing nonfiction or fiction. And you got like, we'll do it. We pretend everyone does it, but it's like, I do look at Goodreads. I used to
Yeah.
watch,
Of
look
course
at
you
it all
do.
the time. I had like a couple of 1 stars. I was like,
Oh,
who the fuck are you?
yeah.
I have to be accepting of it. So I don't really mind that much. And majority of them are pretty good anyway. So,
Yeah.
can't
I
win them
think
all.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you just can't please everyone. That's impossible, and you would completely burn out if that was going to be your aim in a way. Like if you're planning on sitting down and writing a
Yeah.
book that's going to be happy, make everyone happy, you're never going to finish it, and you're going to constantly be doing
Yeah.
edits. And it's like what we were saying at the beginning. Really, it's just perspective is everything. Like people's the way they're going to view it is going to be
Mm,
completely different. Depending on
yeah.
who it is. Mm.
And what is interesting I learned though is I don't know if people talk about, I mean you do kind of nonfiction, is that you what's interesting is um most people when it comes to fiction they won't look at a manuscript until it's finished. They
Okay.
don't, but where nonfiction you can pitch it as a proposal. Like I hadn't written,
Mm.
when I did a proposal, it was like I had these ideas and it definitely evolved and took shape as I was writing it. It felt very kind of, it's weird. So one of the chapters I wrote in a day, another one took me
Yeah.
like a week. And I think it just came as this kind of, I don't know, fluid thing that came out of me. It wasn't kind of, I'm kind of used to writing essays, I guess, and I would say it's probably more of a collection of essays, if anything.
Okay.
So it didn't really each thing didn't have a structure really. It was just more of like, what's a story that most one of the things I did learn about like print journalism about when I did profiles was
Mm.
often to start with like a story, an anecdote. So
Yeah.
I'd often start chapters with an anecdote
Yeah, you
just to
can.
lead you in. And that's one of the things I took from print journalism because I think it's that thing. And I think it also, I think I didn't want to do a pure memoir because
Mm.
I don't think it's interesting enough. And also, I just don't want everyone to know everything about me. You don't, I
Yeah,
mean, I think
I get
memoirs do
that.
hold things back, but I think it was more like, I wanted to be relatable. And I think what's been so lovely is all the feedback of like, you don't have to be a mixed British Tunisian Arab
Mm.
woman of millennial, but there's
Mm.
so many things that we actually have in common. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's just women
Yeah,
or, it's non-binary people, it's men. People have read it and just like, oh wow, yeah, like, it's
exactly. Yeah.
not I think one of the big things is making the local universal, which is the great stories, is like you can have something that's very specific, but it has like universal like appeal or
Yeah,
understanding, you
definitely.
know?
Yeah, I think with your book, there's so much that someone can take from it. And I think especially if they're very like into film, like you, what is it called? Is it a cinephile? Is that correct? Like if
I
someone,
guess so,
yeah,
yeah, cinephile.
don't want to be
Yeah.
wrong. But yeah, like someone that's really into films, like they would take everything from that book because you have so many references in it, and that if that's something that they're into, then they'll take that. Or someone that grew up in the same area as you, for example, would then take something else from that. Even like Britain, like just growing up in the UK, I think there's a lot of things that you can relate to. So I think that's really nice. And obviously in the
Thank you.
book as well, you've written quite vulnerably in certain chapters. So how did you find that experience of writing so vulnerably?
I think yeah, it was interesting. The chapter I wrote in a day was the eating disorder one, and it's the first time I really actually spoken about it or
Okay.
felt comfortable talking about, and that was a real cathartic thing. And
Mm,
it felt good to let it like have it out there
mm,
because there's a lot of shame around it, and I feel like I hadn't really talked about it at all. So being able to put that out there felt good to be vulnerable. The sex stuff in it, actually, that was so easy to write about
yeah.
because I honestly think it's quite funny
Mm,
talking about it. But also I honestly believe it's you can't talk about normalizing sex if you don't talk about it. There were
yeah.
sorry, one of my favorite reviews was it was a 3-star one. She was like, yeah, I really loved it. Bit too much about her sex life, but it was like and it was like, exactly,
Oh,
this is why I want and I loved it because
yeah.
it was kind of like Yeah, I think it's really important that we
Mm,
normalize these conversations, have honest conversations about porn, about masturbation.
yeah.
Um, the things I did do when it came to people in my family, though, I definitely, because obviously I have a chapter on my mum and dad.
Mm,
Um, I mean, didn't contact my biological father for obvious reasons,
yeah,
but
yeah.
as if
Just
you read the
okay.
book, you know.
Yeah.
But uh, anyways, read the book. No, if you don't, strong female character, what movies and
Yes.
features out in August
100%. With the new
Bristol.
chapter.
Yeah. Um, and I got my mom and dad to kind of read it, just to
Okay.
kind of like, just to, to say, are you okay? It's hard because,
Mm,
it is, that's the difficulty, especially when you've got like fat
yeah.
relatives that are still around. You have to be
Yeah.
respectful. And I have a really good relationship with my parents. The one thing though was interesting. I feel like when I was doing the Arab chapter, I was nervous about writing about Palestine.
Okay.
And I think in the book I talked about this really bad experience where I wrote an article about Gal Gadot being cast as Cleopatra and just being trolled, being
Mm.
just the victim of such like I was called so much like ridiculous amount of
Oh my
hate
goodness.
towards me, accusations of it was just awful. And it really is that thing of like it really makes you struggle to
Yeah.
so when I was writing the original thing, I was kind of very like trying to make it balance and say, hey, da da da, and I,
Mm.
references and talk about Palestinian representation. And
Mm.
then I think, but then October 7th happened and the last year of genocide. And
Yeah.
when the publisher approached me and asked me to,
Oh, so they
would they want to
approached
read?
you for the extra
Yeah,
chapter, did they? That was
yeah,
okay.
yeah. One of those things where you're like, re-released in paperback, but smaller. I'm
Yeah.
like, where's
Oh,
my hardcover? But anyway, there we
yeah.
go.
Oh, you never
But
got hardcover. Or did you
no,
just? Oh, oh.
I didn't get a hardcover.
Oh,
Yeah, and so when they approached me, it was a different editor this time. My editor who worked on the book, they had moved on.
mhm.
Um, I think it was also after like they approached me after like Barbie won all the Oscar stuff, and they were like,
Oh,
"Oh, we want
okay.
to re-release your book in a smaller form, but change the color and do like Barbie pink." And yeah,
Right.
and the thing is, I tell you what, the fact that my original book doesn't have pink on it was a choice because I was like,
Yeah.
feminists have reclaimed pink for books,
It's
so I did
gonna be
that.
blue.
But then it was one of those things where it'd already been out. I kind of like detached myself from this book. So I was like,
Okay.
I feel like I've said everything what's said. And
Yeah.
first they were like, oh, maybe we could do a chapter on Barbie. And I'm like, well, the book's not about one film, it's about
Yeah.
subject themes, right?
Mm.
And I said to like, the only thing I feel comfortable writing about at this point is like, what's going on in Palestine,
Yeah.
censorship and cinematic activism. And so, I wrote that chapter. Luckily, I had a month to write that. I wrote that chapter in a month. At first, it was
Yeah.
like a week, which is great. But
Yeah.
that was a really tough experience. Kind of looking back at that thing, at the kind of last year, and obviously that I wrote that in March, April of 2024.
Okay.
And and then for me, that was, and I just had this such clarity of like, I actually do not care what anyone says. If
Yeah.
anyone wants to critique me because I was backed up and I think I just was not scared of being accused of any of these
Yeah.
things anymore because I think that's the big part of the kind of how they've allowed this kind of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim
Yeah.
sentiment is that we don't when people anti-Semitism often weaponized in a ways that it's not.
Hmm.
You've read the chapter like I was very clear and I'm very clear not to do
Yeah.
this thing, but I've got such a multicultural diverse range of
Yeah.
friends like it felt really important to me to speak to that, and speak to the history of how Vanessa Redgrave speaking at the Oscars, that's
Mm.
come about now, looking at, the way that Palestinian films don't get distribution,
Yeah,
these
exactly.
little things, and also just that feeling of what it felt like
Mhm.
to be an Arab woman and
Yeah.
then witness this dehumanization, witness all this stuff,
Hmm.
see kids that look like you and your brother when you were a kid,
Exactly.
share
Yeah.
my brother's name, Kareem, these things. It was really difficult. So, I think I felt far more like confident and the sort of fear
Mm.
of upsetting or disrupting the
Yeah.
narrative didn't scare me because there are so many people who have done it before me. I mean, I really love what Ta-Nehisi Coates said recently, and I haven't read his book yet, but he did an interview with The Guardian, and he
Mm.
said it's our job as writers. Like, what do we
Yeah.
lose by not writing about Palestine? And it was just it felt so good to see him
Yeah,
say that. Yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's so yeah. So the new book came out. It's I confined the Barbie pink to the lettering, not the full. It's
Not the full
pink and
thing.
yellow. Kind of
Yeah.
looks like a rhubarb and custard kind of
It's a
colors,
very
I
nice
guess.
color scheme. Yeah. Yeah. But no, I think that's really interesting how when like because in the Arab chapter, obviously in the original sort of release of the book, you were talking a lot about your own identity as well. And you've spoken about like the abuse that you received online. It's interesting how you didn't feel that you could release it when it was sort of almost about yourself in a way, like when it was you talking about your own experience versus the experience of hundreds of thousands of people in Palestine and what everyone's seeing at the moment online,
Yeah.
that you then didn't feel that you had to like censor yourself or didn't feel that you had to hold back on that.
I think it felt like, because yeah, I haven't really inserted myself online about my feelings and what I've been going through and the feelings of mental health, because again, I think it's deflection from it. What I'm going through is nothing compared to that. But this was my book, it's about me. And
Mm,
this felt it felt like the only appropriate space to actually do that in a meaningful way. I
mm,
think it's actually worked out to be maybe the longest chapter in the book or the second longest chapter in the book, yeah, now
yeah.
that it's added to it. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it's about me. I'm allowed to write by
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
If there's any place I can write by myself, it's in my own
going to be
memoir.
in your own book, exactly. In a
Yeah.
memoir slash like exploration,
Yeah.
100% it's
Yeah.
going to be about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was just wondering because you speak a lot about relationships in the book and specifically with your parents. So, what does like belonging mean to you now that you've kind of moved on from like childhood and that kind of
Mm.
experience?
That's a good question. And you know what? When people say that's a good question, is that they need more time to think about the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I could tell it's just
And
like
that
a
means it's a
pending
good
thing.
question, but it is a good question. I guess it's what I've really got to a point with, like now, certainly in my life, is belonging, I guess, in a sense of like my identity, my mixed identity, is seeing, understanding that, every part of me, who I am,
Mm,
I'm not split, I embrace it. There was times when I didn't feel like I had a right to connection to a Tunisian identity or an Arab identity, but it's just as much part of me. That is my ancestral heritage. And how do I use my way, even if I can't have a relationship, belong,
mm.
with my, Tunisian family? I can do it through my writing or,
Yeah.
my cuisine or things like that. So
Mhm.
I guess certainly in that kind of identity sense, I feel very secure and I feel like I belong
Oh,
to
okay.
everything that has made me. I think one of the things I've really thought about is I mentioned kind of the anxiety I have,
Mm,
and a lot of that stems from, I'm an anxious attachment sort of thing.
mm,
I often feel like if it's in, I have to be perfect. And I used to have this thing where I have to be good. I have to be relationship in like with parents or relationship or I have to be
yeah.
perfect or with my, even friendships or they'll leave. I can't have any sort of demands on people or they're gonna leave me. So I had this sort of like abandonment there. And I think one
Yeah.
of the things I've realized, because I think I've realized just in the last working on things for myself is understanding of like feeling belonging with myself in a
Mm,
sense of I don't need the validation from other people.
yeah.
I need to start finding worth in myself and
Mm,
value in myself without needing it. Like I'm single. I went for a breakup in 4 months ago,
okay.
which was, I was with this person for a year and it was quite, very sad and there's so much love there. But
Mm.
I think in the past when I've gone through breakups, I've got often like, and actually interestingly enough, I think the irony of that, when I wrote my first book, literally as we were doing the edits, me and that ex broke up, and
Oh
my
God.
book the release came out, and then
Yeah.
me and my ex broke up like 12 days later, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh
There's
great.
obviously the
So
book.
in both books both books there's dedications to my ex-boyfriends, but
Oh. Oh
oh,
wow.
there you go. I realize next time I write, and if I get another book published, I'm going to be like,
Mm.
thank you, my
Not,
publishers.
yeah.
That's it. And
Exactly.
my
Yeah.
friends.
Dedicated to my mum.
No,
That's all.
yeah. But you know what? I don't even mind it because it actually speaks to a time like That
Oh
is
yeah,
real. That was real.
100%.
But I think what I'm really trying to find is a sense of belonging, and like I'm trying to find a sense of belonging that I feel like I have a really strong friendship group. I feel like I have
Yeah.
a really kind of a better dialogue with my parents. I have such a better friendship with my brother Kareem. Like,
Oh, I love
we had a
that.
very, I didn't want to talk too much about Kareem in the book, but like we didn't have the best relationship growing up, but we like now we have this connection. So I think
Mm.
finding my belonging in validation within myself and just like really appreciating the people I'm around.
Yeah, no, you can tell. I think relationships are really important to you in the book, and the way you talk about people is really lovely. Like even when you were just talking about your friends earlier, the way you describe them, you can tell that you have a lot of love for them. So that's it's always nice to see, I
Right.
think. Yeah.
But
And
I think also as a child-free person, sorry, because I'm single, single,
yeah,
36, I don't have, your family, it's your chosen family, right? Your friends. So I feel like, I'm like fake aunties to like my friends'
yeah.
kids, right? That means something. And it realized
Yeah.
in a non-traditional way of like having these kids, I have to find family in around me.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because you've almost read my mind. That was going to be my next question, was sort of you mentioned in the book about childlessness and your sort of choice to not have children. And I wondered what family then means to you now. So what is your sort of idea of what a family is?
I guess, well, in the book, I kind of say at the moment, it's not that I just don't know. It's more
Okay.
that it's not that I wouldn't have kids. It's just
Mm.
that I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if I want it anymore. It's not something to me, but it's also something where I don't have this broodiness or urge
Mm.
that is going to prevent me doing what I want to do in my life. As I kind of say in the book, I just want to be selfish for as long as possible.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and I also, and actually, my thing about the idea of family and never had kids, I'd
Mm.
actually love to adopt more because my stepdad,
Mm.
Phil, he is like our bond is thicker than like blood. You know what I mean? And so
Mm.
for me, it's like blended family. I'm a blended family, so I think
Yeah.
who knows if I have a kid. If I can't biologically have one, then
Mm.
I'll adopt.
Yeah.
It's weird because again, I'm 36 now and I wrote it when I was like when I started writing that book. So it was 2022 when it came out. So yeah. And I know it's only been like 2, 3 years, but I don't know, it's different headspace now. And I've gone through like
Yeah.
a couple of breakups. So you're like,
Yeah.
where are you now? So I just realized that it still doesn't seem like a thing that I'm desperate for. What I really want is a dog. I want a dog so
Oh.
bad. I can't have one in my building because I don't allow pets in the building.
Oh, that's
So
so
yeah,
bad.
so that's the thing I'm broody for. When I see a dog, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that's what you need though sometimes. Like sometimes you just need a pet, and that will prevent you sometimes from wanting children as well, like having to look after a pet. But yeah, no, it's interesting though, because I did a lot of randomly, like it wasn't intentional. I did a lot of like childlessness work previously, like when I was working with some authors. I worked with Nicole Louis for a bit, and her whole book is about not having children and the choice to not have children. And she interviewed a load of amazing women, and I just think it's such an expansive conversation to have. So I think, yeah, definitely, if you're still undecided, like that's totally normal. I
Mm,
think it's such a massive life decision to like to actually have a child.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But I
And
think, and it's interesting because the word childlessness, even that suggests a lack, and it's
yeah,
like, well, it's child. Well, I would probably use child-free more because it's
yeah,
your
that's
choice.
true.
It's not you're not lacking children, actually.
That's
You know what
true.
I mean?
Yeah,
And I think studies have found that single women in their 40s are ha the
yeah,
happiest they've ever been.
yeah.
But that's also important about the characters that I want to see because I
Mm,
do talk a bit about like how often I wrote a piece actually about motherhood and how often you
mm,
rarely see, you always see mothers. There's always
mm.
the trope. I mean, the example I use in mainstream cinema is Scarlett Johansson's character Black Widow,
Oh,
right? Natasha
yeah.
Romanoff. She's
Mm.
she's made sterile, and then she's like, "I'm a monster because I can't have kids." It's like, oh
Like,
fuck you,
are
man.
you?
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The
Is that Bridget
negative
Jones as
stereotype.
well? They kind
Yeah,
of
the
like,
negative.
oh, sorry. No,
Right.
go ahead.
No, 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 exactly. You're right. Bridget Jones, and then they gave her kids, and you know, I mean, I'm going to see the new film next week, so we'll see
Yeah,
how
me
that works
too.
out.
I love Bridget Jones. Yeah, I think but yeah, it was just one of those things where it's actually like her whole character was kind of built around her being like single, like child free, yeah.
Yeah.
Um and it's now they've kind of extended it just so that they can make her this mother because that's what people are used to seeing, I guess. Like
Well, yeah, it's like Alien, the example I give of
mm,
of Ellen Ripley, right?
Mm.
She starts the first film, she's badass. Second film, they make her a surrogate mother, and then our whole thing is about like getting
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like,
James
oh,
Cameron did the second film. So anyway, it's not. But my thing is, it's not necessarily that's the wrong. Wanting to have children, oh my God, like that's
yeah.
that is nothing wrong with that. But I
No,
think
of
we need to
course.
be recognized that also our world is fucked up, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of like, is it actually ethically or morally
Yeah,
responsible to bring a child into the world when all this stuff's going on, cost of living crisis, all this type of stuff? Like,
exactly.
not to be doom and gloom, but Jesus Christ, there's enough things
Yeah.
to go with,
It's
not to have
not a
like a
nice.
crying baby on your tit, like,
Exactly.
however long.
That's my worst nightmare. There was this thing that I saw recently, and it was like this girl was like just crying online. She was like, I've had the worst day, and she was like, the worst thing I can think of right now is someone asking me what's for dinner. Like I'm like, I do not know. I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious. But yeah, no. So the last two questions are a little bit more like fun, like I guess, answer them however you want, of course. So what if someone could only read one chapter of your book, which one would it be?
Um, You know what? I'm just going to say the new one, the
Yeah.
Palestine chapter, because I just feel like it is so important
Hmm.
to cut through a
Mm,
lot of the mainstream narrative about it. So for me, that's the most like pressing one I would
mm.
read. And then if it wasn't that one, if I was that one, my second one would be honestly, I think the masturbation one, because
Okay.
I feel like a lot of people would be happier if they masturbated
Yeah.
or in that sort and learn how to like get themselves off.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
I think there's a lot of pent up stress.
Mm.
And I think a lot of women, especially,
I was going to
also,
say
I
for
think
women
men need to read it as
specifically.
well so they know how to do it. Because I mean, you're kind of doing the same when
Hmm.
um, so yeah, so I guess those two. There you
Yeah,
go.
that's a good answer. I like that. So either like a really pressing,
Palestine and masturbation.
yeah, I was going to say a really pressing political topic and masturbation. But I suppose
I mean, it's all
masturbation is
political. I
political.
think masturbation is political. I think the fact that
Exactly.
women don't know how to do it or like,
Exactly.
demonized for like having it. I mean, yeah, there we
Yeah.
go.
I think everything's political, like everything, like time's political, like yeah, everything you
Right.
think of, yeah. No, so that's a good answer. I like that. And is there any review? I suppose you talked about this a little bit, but like, have there been any reviews that have stuck with you?
Um, I mean, I try not to remember. I try not to memorize, but I think it's just been really nice when you know what I really love, I get paid to write reviews, but
Mm,
I think what's been really nice for the Goodreads is the people, and you yourself, you did give a really lovely, lovely long review, and someone you took the time to
mm,
talk about what you liked about the book. It's very easy to kind of like just do whatever, do
yeah,
that
good
here and
book.
there, but
Yeah.
yeah, and it's fine. Great. I'll take the stars. But I think it's really anyone who's taken long, and I really appreciate your review. I really appreciate, some of the early ones. And but I do like the fact that it came organically, right? It
Mm,
came out quite a lot after my book had been out for a while. I think it already a year or something when you came
yeah.
up. And so it's been the nicest thing I can ever have is like um people coming up to you. Like I was at a
Oh,
screening and some
really?
guy came up to me and was like, "Hey, you Hannah?" I was like, "Yeah, guys, I really love your book." And I was like, "That's
That's
amazing,"
lovely.
out
Yeah.
in the wild. And because, you can get bogged down with who's buying it, who's reviewing it. Oh
All the
my God,
stuff.
am I getting interviews and stuff? And yeah, it can be a bit disappointing. But
Mm,
actually, I feel like there's one thing I live by is that, the books, writing the books is the prize. Anything else is a bonus. And so just remember that privilege of being able to do that. So yeah.
mm. That's lovely. That's a really lovely place to end, I think. So thank you for all of your answers. They've been really insightful and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Millie.
Yeah, lovely. I'll stop the recording. Thank you, everyone.